All right, a whole lot of news here on this Friday evening inside the Oval Office and on Truth Social, quite frankly. The President of the United States there addressing a post that he sent just before the event that you witnessed there inside the Oval. The President there to talk about drug prices and another major pharmaceutical, AstraZeneca, who will be a part of the initiative to try to lower drug prices in this country. But before that, and it was the first question that the President was asked after he made his comments, that is making the news tonight. Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on News Nation. A post from the President, 100% tariffs on China. And you see the bottom of the screen there? Here's the other part of it. Any and all critical software would be subject to export controls. The President saying that this would start on November 1st. Why, you might wonder? Well, China put export controls just the other day on a lot of its rare earth minerals and critical minerals. Donald Trump, Xi Jinping expected to talk in a couple weeks, but the President said earlier today that wasn't going to happen. The market, the stock market, already sunk on that news, and then came that post of possibly 100% tariffs. Also here in Washington today, the administration announcing layoffs all across the federal government, Health and Human Services, Housing and Urban Development, Homeland Security, Energy, Department of Education, the Treasury Department as well. As it is now day 10 of this government shutdown, still no end in sight. So when you think about what happens here, or at least what we've witnessed over the last hour or so, you've got the President possibly reigniting a trade war with China, while also telling Democrats, essentially, if the shutdown continues, the firings will commence. We'll get lawmaker reaction here in a moment, but first, Chris Steyerwalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute with me. So too is Mick Mulvaney, News Nation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. Chris, Mick, hello, happy Friday. There was a whole lot of news. Specifically after the bell today, Mick, I'll start with you, and that 100% tariff post from China, or from the President on China. And now the question is, will he follow through? President Trump asked about this in the Oval. He said, quote, "We'll see what happens. That's why I made it November 1st.
Yeah, and keep in mind, the two leaders are slated to talk before November 1st. So Trump made the move now, but gives him leverage in those discussions. Look, it's not good news. There's no question. I don't think we can call this a trade war yet, but it's certainly.
You don't think? That's what we called it in the first term, right?
It's signaling. I mean, keep in mind that the deadlines are sort of fluid with the Trump administration.
Chris, whatever you call it, it was certainly ratcheted up today.
Well, yeah, and how's the economy? The 7 straight months of contraction in the in the manufacturing sector because of how much the manufacturing sector relies on imports to make its finished products. The jobs estimates that come from private sector sources, because the government's closed, say that September was the worst month for jobs since the pandemic. The bad news is stacking up, and it's real. And when we look at prices at the grocery store and we look at these other things, I know that there are a lot of Republicans in Washington today thinking about new tariffs and saying, just please stop. Like, take the win on Israel. Enjoy it for a moment. Give us a day to just tell you did a great job and enjoy the moment. But here comes the news fire hose again.
And part of the news fire hose, Mick, was the news from one of your closest confidants, one of your closest friends, your old protege, Russ Vought, director over at the Office of Management and Budget. He said the RIFs, the reduction in forces, are underway. The administration tonight is describing this as in the thousands. There's about 2.2 million federal workers. And I guess one of the questions going forward is, how big is this now and how big is this going to get?
Yeah, there's some reporting by the Washington Post this evening that the first round of RIFs, reductions in forces, layoffs, will be 16,000 people, which is a lot if you stop to think about it, especially if you're one of those 16,000. But still, Blake, it's less than 1% of the federal workforce.
Yep.
So it's not that big a deal. Again, I don't want to minimize it if you're one of those folks, but that's not a large layoff.
Chris?
It doesn't have anything to do with the shutdown. That money for those salaries doesn't become available now, right? Those jobs, if they weren't funded, they weren't getting paid. Eliminating those jobs, and this is what the president says, is to punish Democrats. And he calls the agencies and the gigs. There was this office at the Department of the Treasury that it was a bipartisan darling that provides startup money and is a business incubator and does this stuff. They're going to nuke that, not because they get the money that they can give to troops or do something else with. They're going to do it because they feel like they can hurt Democrats with it by saying, here's your punishment for staying in shutdown, is we're going to take away stuff that you like.
Steigerwalt, hang by with me if you can. Mick Mulvaney, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night. Have a nice weekend. Talk next week.
You too, guys.
All right, it is 6:30 here on the East Coast, and I thank you for watching and staying with us. And that includes Congresswoman Maxine Dexter. She is a Democrat from Oregon. Congresswoman, hello. I'm going to get to you in a second here, but I want to start with Greg Murphy. Hello, Congressman, a Republican from North Carolina, on the two big stories here. The president announcing this possibility of 100% additional tariffs on China and the layoffs within the federal government. Congressman, let's start with the tariff news from the president. You want him taking this tact against China?
Yeah. You know, Blake, China is using its tool to try to rob the world of rare earth elements. I'm sorry.
Right.
Long day. But look, the president has used this tool before very, very well to bring these rogue nations that have certain corners on the market to bear. So, look, this is what he does, and look at what the success he's had. Like him, don't like him. Look, you cannot deny the success. You look at the pricing thing that he was just talking about. You can't deny the success that he has had with negotiating. So, look, if China's going to play hardball, the only thing they understand, and this is what's happened by soft presidents in the past, the only thing they understand is just hardball right back. So that's what we're having.
How do you think they perceive the president? Because around April 1st, for quote unquote Liberation Day, he had a tariff number well above 100%, and he backed off it.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And he thought that he could talk to Xi, and he thought that he could negotiate with him. So if you're Xi Jinping, you've seen the president put tariffs forward, but also back off.
Yeah, sure. It's part of the negotiating tool. That's why he put November 1st, hoping that they'll back down on some of their stuff. It's all part of the negotiating tool. And Blake, we haven't had a president be able to do this, and I don't know when we have ever had a president be able to negotiate these things. You look at what he's done as far as a negotiating tool. Yeah, there are a lot of things, and you can critique it midstream, early stream, but the end result is really what matters. And he's been able to deliver for the American people.
You might remember, Congressman, the other day, the president posted a video of Russ Vought as the Grim Reaper. Yeah. And today, we learned of thousands of government, and here's the video. Today, we learned of thousands of government layoffs.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with it? If so, how deep do you think that they should be?
Yeah, Blake, this whole thing didn't need to happen. This whole thing did not need to happen. Chuck Schumer is afraid of his political left.
No, I know, Congressman, and we've heard.
Thing.
No, I know, and we've heard this for 10 days now. The now before us is the layoffs, and the question is going to be how deep and for how long they should go.
Yeah, no, Blake, I don't like this anymore, I believe, than the president likes this. I mean, he said he didn't want to do this, but look, you have to bring some negotiating tool to the table, and look at our military. I have a very heavy military district. We're going to have people that rely, honestly, on some government assistance. We're going to have our military not getting paychecks. So look, this is a drastic, ridiculous measure by Senate Democrats. We voted 13 times to keep the government open during the Biden administration. They've all of a sudden decided they want to make up a crisis. So yeah, sad things happen. I wish it weren't happening. I'm very, very reluctant to do this, but the president has to use whatever tools he has to get the government funded and get us back to what we're supposed to do, and that's the appropriations process.
Congressman Greg Murphy, Republican, North Carolina, waiting for 30 minutes, sticking by. I appreciate it, Congressman. We'll see you back here next time here on the Hill.
Thanks.
Appreciate it from the other side. You're welcome as well from Maxine Dexter. She is a congresswoman from Oregon. It's 3:30 out west there in the state of Oregon. You're home where you are tonight. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill, Congresswoman. Let's pick up where I just left off with Congressman Murphy, which is the layoffs. They're here, right? Thousands, as we understand them, across several government agencies. As a Democrat, do you sit back now, Congresswoman, and say, okay, maybe we've taken it as far as we should have, time to cut a deal?
Look, we've been waiting to cut a deal from before the time the Republicans let the government shut down. You have heard this over and over again. They are in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. It's absolutely their failure to govern that has led to this shutdown. The threat of mass layoffs is an absolutely unlawful threat that has nothing to do with the shutdown. It is a threat trying to invoke fear in a constituency that doesn't know better. It is a fear tactic. It's misleading. It's absolutely illegal. In fact, President Trump signed the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019 that protects people during a shutdown from losing their pay, and their jobs are already protected.
So look, it's day 10. You know this, I know this. But the question is, this is happening now, right? Yeah. And so I hear you on where the blame is. I heard the congressman on where the blame is, and that's been going on for 10 days. And I guess it gets back to the question of what next from the Democratic Party? What next from Democratic lawmakers? What next from Chuck Schumer?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for Chuck Schumer. I can certainly speak for myself that we are holding the line on healthcare for Americans. And they have led to a tragic crisis with people getting notices right now of doubling their healthcare premiums, and there's no relief for people. We could lose as many as 15 million Americans from being insured because they fail to center these ACA premium tax credits. They need to come to the table and have a negotiation. This is absolutely their failure. And, threats of firing people that are illegal, they've been doing that since day one. It has nothing to do with the shutdown.
Let me leave you with this, Congresswoman. Tariffs have been one of the big stories, obviously. Do you want the president to be tough on China right now? What'd you make of that move that he just made?
Tariffs have a role in very rare instances, and what he's doing right now is putting taxes on the American people who don't have the ability to live paycheck to paycheck right now. It is egregious that our president continues to put working people as the payers for his I would say absurd policies. So a trade war when we are in a contracture for 7 months does not make sense to me.
Okay. Again, you waited for a half hour when the president was talking. I do appreciate it, Congresswoman, on a busy news night here on the Hill. We'll talk again soon. Maxine Dexter out there in Oregon.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me.
All right. We haven't even talked about yet that the president is set to head to the Middle East. And possibly, or likely, I should say, the hostages coming out over the weekend. Other side of the break, what's before the president with all this news in front of him when we return. Stay with us. A busy Friday night, and it is going to be even busier over the weekend. A live look right now as it's 6:43 here in Washington this evening, 1:43 in the Middle East as we look at the border there between Israel and Gaza. As we heard from the president just moments ago, he will be headed to the Middle East, this region, expected to speak in Israel and head to Egypt as well for the ceremony and signing of a possible peace agreement, likely peace agreement between Israel and Hamas. Full panel here with me now. T.W. Origi, Vice President of Push Digital Group. Sabrina Siddiqui, National Politics Reporter for The Wall Street Journal. Chris Stirewalt back with me once again, host of the Hill Sunday, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. And Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you in. Lots of news beyond tariffs and layoffs. That's in this country. You go abroad. Sabrina, this is something you've been covering for 2 years now, sort of the build up to this weekend. And I wonder what you think is before Donald Trump and before his administration, let's say over these next 48 hours or so?
Well, I think that the news of the ceasefire has been welcomed and applauded by leaders around the world. It's been such a long process to get here,
right.
But it's also a very delicate moment until we actually see the terms of the deal play out. Of course, President Trump expected to travel to the Middle East. I do think his administration feels very good about where things stand. But some of the key questions are: will this ceasefire hold? Twice before it hasn't. And then what about the other phases of the plan? Oftentimes, it has essentially stalled at phase one, as opposed to what does the governance look like for post-war Gaza? What will be the extent of the IDF withdrawal from the enclave? What will the rebuilding of Gaza look like? So those are some of the key questions still ahead. But for now, certainly, I think the administration feels very good about how they have gotten to this moment.
Yeah, no, I think this is a monumental moment for President Trump. He didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize this time around. I know he's bummed, but next time he will get serious consideration, or he should, because another Nobel Prize laureate in the past, Theodore Roosevelt, I don't think we've seen somebody throw the weight of the presidency around with the goal of peace as much as Teddy did, or Trump has now. Look, he has exhibited why his negotiating skills brought along the Abraham Accords and have brought on other peace agreements. He is doing it in an unorthodox way, but it's clearly effective. I think we're going to be reading books about this in the future. And just because the Council on Foreign Relations crowd doesn't like it, it's working and it's really effective. There's a long way to go, but this is a chance to be happy.
Put a bookmark in that for a second, no pun intended, because here was the president just a little while ago on that idea of not getting the Nobel Prize.
The person who actually got the Nobel Prize called me and said, I'm accepting this in honor of you because you really deserved it. A very nice thing to do. I didn't say then give it to me, though. I think she might have. She was very nice.
Funny light moment there, Dan. Is TW right that this is like books are going to be written about this and how the president got to this moment?
For sure. I think books, movies, the whole gambit. I mean, there's a media empire around the Donald Trump intrigue here. Look, I think it's a great thing to have the ceasefire. It's very good. It's welcome. It's a relief and should be. It would be exceptionally great, and I would give him great credit as a Democrat if the hostages do come home as we hope that they do on Monday. That's a thing we should all be rooting for, and I hope that comes to pass. Where I'm less sure the president's going to be successful is in the long-term durability of any of this. We've had ceasefires before, and when he talked about in that same press conference kind of what's left in the Middle East, he referenced, there's a couple brush fires here and there. We're going to put them out easily. That's just not a realistic appraisal of what it's going to take to have lasting peace in this region, which is very complicated. So I will give him credit. And he deserves it. If the hostages come home, that is a wonderful thing by itself. But there's a big piece of business here that I'm not sure he's really prepared to take on beyond this.
Chris, there was a story that popped today that kind of came out of left field a little bit, which is that Qatar is going to be going to have fighter pilots trained at a base in Idaho.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it goes to show just sort of how the whole landscape is shifting, does it not? I don't know, or maybe what comes from here. Nobody knows the future of the Middle East, but clearly something's going on in the region.
What could go wrong with giving the Qataris access to an air base in the United States? No problems could possibly come from having the Qataris operating an air base inside Idaho. I mean, look, the thing about Donald Trump is he and his administration, they do so much in so many fronts in so many places. Now, the bad news, if you're a Republican or you're in this administration, is a lot of it will go wrong. The good news is if you do enough stuff, if you're pulling enough levers, if you're pushing in enough places, you're going to get wins, right? So there's sharpshooters and there's shotgunners, and you have people like, let's say, Bill Clinton worked all of this time on Middle East peace. We're going to do it. 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 It didn't happen.
Right.
He didn't get what he wanted. Donald Trump is every 30 seconds changing, doing new initiatives, doing stuff, and he got a win on this one.
Yep. To the point where today nothing could have happened, right? And this would have been the thing, which is a major moment for President Trump. But what happened today? After the bell closed on Wall Street, he said, China, 100% extra tariffs are coming your way by November 1st, possibly, while he signed off on, or his administration went off on layoffs, thousands of layoffs for the federal government, across the federal government. Here was the president just a little while ago on layoffs.
So what we're doing is, as these different groups come due, we're going to make a determination. Do we want them or not? And I must tell you, a lot of them happen to be Democrat-oriented. Some of these people, these are largely people that the Democrats want. Many of them will be fired.
TW, are you good with tariffs up and people losing their jobs simultaneously?
I look at them in two totally different.
But I mean,
buckets
this is,
here.
but it's two different things. But that's what's before him tonight. He's trying to take it to Democrats, is he not?
Sure.
On one front, and he's trying to take it to Xi Jinping on another.
Totally. And he's trying to take it to Middle Eastern partners and use a stick and carrot to get them more engaged in the game over there, like in the case of Qatar. But look, China, this is part of a huge negotiation dance that he's been doing now for months. Obviously, it was a much higher level before. It's a lower level now. I don't know what's going on in the negotiations behind the scenes. I don't know the backdoor channels that the Chinese government and the U.S. are having. In terms of laying people off during the shutdown, Congress hasn't operated and sent them money to fund the programs that they say are necessary. It is now incumbent upon the president to make do with what he has. And if it is a reduction in force, which is in the power of the executive, he ought to act. And they are doing so.
Look, he's the guy that's doing all these things, as Chris said. Yep. It is a shotgun approach. Mick's made this point. The bigger you go, the stronger you say, I can own it, I'm running the show here, the more you own everything. And the president owns all of this stuff. And besides the reduction in force, which he owns because he's directing vote to do it, and the layoffs that are real there. There's Chris, in the last segment, you made a good point about this. There's bad news stacked on bad news on bad news in the economy. There's the negative job growth for the last few months. Inflation's back on the rise. Electric prices, utilities are spiking while he's canceling energy projects. The healthcare cliff is a real thing where people right now are going onto their website at Aetna and other places and seeing premium increases that they're pricing in for 100% higher or more than what they were. That's $800, $1,000 more a month for these folks. At the same time, you're going to have all those other effects of the big, beautiful bill, including state cuts. They're going to affect services, healthcare cuts that go into effect next year. These things are stacking up, and he's going to have a real problem because this economy is going to be his, and it's not good.
I like the juxtaposition you had about, success overseas with respect to the ceasefire in Gaza, but economic uncertainty here at home. And the reason that matters is because what ultimately drives voters at the polls, what we've seen time and again, is domestic priorities like jobs and the economy, inflation, and the cost of living. So, I think the potential peace in the Middle East is more of a legacy moment. If the ceasefire holds, that's more about his legacy. It's not going to have meaningful impact in next year's midterms in the same way that a prolonged shutdown might, an increase in cost to the consumer because of tariffs. That's actually what voters are ultimately going to cast their ballots based upon if they're seeing higher prices here at home.
I guess you got a few things to talk about on the best Sunday show in the biz.
Yeah, we'll probably find a way through. We've got Mike Lawler, Republican Congress.
Oh, he had that scene with Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah, so they got spicy. So we got Greg Stanton, Democrat. We've got the Obama administration's former ambassador to Israel, who is going to give us a little chalk talk on how it's going to go over there and all of that stuff, and give me a little bit of an education. Okay. So it's Sunday morning, 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Eastern.
Live it up.
Right here on News Nation. Live it up. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Still to come, other side of the break. Totally different. She was one of one. Other side, Sister Jean, and the news involving her. Stay with us. All right, if you're just getting home, trying to catch up on today's top stories, here's what's trending right now on thehill.com. The president, as you know, didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, but he actually said today he spoke to the recipient of that prize. The president will be headed abroad, as we've been talking about, to the Middle East this weekend. There's this. The Senate passes the mammoth annual defense policy bill, but as we know, day 10 of the government shutdown, still lots of questions about when troops and federal government workers will get paid next. And then there's this as well. MIT rejects Trump compact. The prestigious institution said no to making sweeping changes in exchange for funding advantages that were offered by the White House. To check out these stories and more, all you have to do is head on over to thehill.com. By the way, you can scan that QR code for our newsletters. All right, before we head out tonight, it was in 2018 my Wolverines made it to the NCAA Final Four in March Madness. Michigan fell short, but this was the story of that Final Four, really. It's when the world was introduced, for many folks at least, to the Loyola team chaplain, Sister Jean Dolores Schmidt, who died yesterday at the age of 106. Sister Jean was always a beloved member of the Loyola community, but she shot to international fame, really, during that 2018 run, attending post-game press conferences, stealing the spotlight from the players in some cases, as the fan favorite who would sport T-shirts with her likeness and chant her mantra of worship, work, win. When she turned 105, she received a proclamation from President Biden for her lifetime of service. Today, she was recognized by a fellow Chicago icon, President Obama, posting, "March Madness won't be the same without her." Sister Jean, a life well lived, a remarkable woman, as President Obama put it better, dead at the age of 106. Still to come here on News Nation. Other side of the break, Elizabeth Vargas reports. She talks to the FDA Commissioner Marty Makary about that big news on drug prices. That is just seconds away. Speaking of big, it was a big day and continues to be a big day of news. I'm Blake Berman. I thank you for being with us. Elizabeth takes it from here.